it's my pleasure to go over streamers with you. You guys just came from nymphs, did you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, you know, now that you're done with bobber fishing and wondering whether or not you got a strike. And I love saying that to Jimmy, but, you know, I have to say that's one of the most effective ways of catching fish. But it's not necessarily my favorite. One of my favorites is streamers. And one, because the action involved. Number two, it's a great way to prospect when there isn't much happening in the way of feeding. If you've got fish that are tucked up underneath the bank and just resting, some of the larger fish that only feed at night, and when they do feed, they're looking for large morsels, I like to give them a large morsel. And there's no question the clouds don't need to part and say, you have a strike. You know, because you just saw this torpedo come out with a wake behind it. You see this big splash, your rod's going like this. There are some indications that there's something going on the end of your line. Because you're using large flies, let's do the safety part first. I mean, you have to worry about small flies as well, but bigger ones even more so. You know, big meaty hook. Pinch down the barbs. It's easier to get out of your clothing, out of your face, out of your arm, out of your guide, you know, whatever. And they're easier to get out of the fish. Wear glasses. I like a broad-rimmed hat because when things all go sour and it's all coming flying back at you, you can go like this. You know, let it catch the hat instead of your face. And I'm serious. Winds and your casting ability, I mean, even the best of us, we wear broad-rimmed hats to protect ourselves. So, safety. The other thing is, besides pinching down the barbs, you want to make sure you've got a sharp hook. And I'll tell you, even when you buy a brand new fly, it may not be sharp. I'm going to grab one out of here for grins. You hold on to that. Thanks. If you take, and notice again, I'm talking about a larger, you know, hook here. If you take the hook and run it across your thumbnail, if it skips like this one, it's not sharp. Your thumbnail's pretty soft chitin, actually, softer than the inside of a fish's mouth. If it's going to dance off your thumb, it's likely to dance out of the fish's mouth. So you want a small file, which I lost, to sharpen your hook underneath. And I do a triangular thing, sharpen this way, and then on top, so you're sharpening on three sides. And it only takes a couple of touches generally, and then test it to make sure that it's sharp. Okay? And you'll do that before you start fishing, and check it as you're going along, because after you beat this on a rock or a log or two, you may find that it's not sharp anymore. You need to sharpen your fly. All right. Yeah, this one will do fine for a demo. Up above, what was one of the key things you learned about where you placed your fly line after you put the fly in the water with the nymph? You want a drag-free float, right? So what did you do with the fly line?
Mended it, or put
and where did you put it? You put it
upstream
above the fly, right? So that you got this nice drag-free float. Okay, we're going to do just the opposite. I'm going to show you why. If I gave a drag-free float to this Clouser minnow here, and it came down at you as a fish, you're sitting there, just this nice butt action coming at you. I don't know about you, but doesn't excite you, probably wouldn't excite much in the way of a fish. If, on the other hand, sitting there, and all of a sudden this came down into your field of view and went zap across like that, very different presentation. Well, how are you going to get that fly to point this way? The only way you're going to do that is not if you've got the line up above the fly, but if the line is across the stream. So what we're going to do when we get out here is, instead of reaching above the fly, we're actually going to point it down the middle of the stream, and I'll show you that in a minute. Because what we're trying to do here is give the impression of food. If I'm a self-respecting minnow, I'm kind of going downstream, chasing the little things the minnows chase, and all of a sudden I go into a big hole and see a big fish, what am I going to do? It's going to be like, out of there. Flight response. What is the big trout's reaction to a flight response? Must be something to eat. I better grab it now. So you're going to present it and zip it across. You want that fly moving. Also, a lot of these you'll find are weighted, so that you can get them down near where the fish are. In a stream like this, I'll start out with a floating fly line with maybe a weighted fly, because this is shallow. But you get to a deep hole, I've got another rod rigged up there with a sink tip line, which hopefully I have a chance to show you, where you can get that fly down near the bottom. So weighted flies, weighted lines, get the fly to where the fish are. One of the things they say as you go to buy these, that, and maybe fly shops do this, but they say if you're not getting hung up on logs and losing flies, you're not fishing where the fish are. It hurts our hearts to lose flies, but if you're not getting down where the fish are, you're not getting down where the fish are, and they're not necessarily going to come up to catch one of these. Well, what are we trying to imitate? And I'll pass this around. Some of these things we're actually imitating, and you'll see in the next session if they got one. I don't know. Did they get muddler this morning?
Haven't been down to look.
Okay. Muddler minnow's got a big wide flat head, kind of prehistoric looking critter. Trout love muddlers, okay? Or we call them, I'm calling it a muddler, sculpin. This is a muddler minnow. Why they call it muddler instead of a sculpin imitation, I'm not quite sure where the name came from. But you'll hear muddler minnow, sculpin, big flat head, down near the bottom, scooting along. This is meant to imitate something that's in the stream. You'll see something like an olive matuka, maybe a little red up near the gills. This is a very effective fly I've found in here with brook trout. You know, small, you know, another real small brookie or other fish zipping across. Soft feathers, generally, that will flow and move. Maybe a little bit of flash put in, a little bit of white, a little sparkle with some gold thread on it, because scales flash, gills may flash red. There are ones that maybe instead of minnows, you look to imitate a leech. And although this one's kind of a cross between a muddler and a leech, long tail, moves, very soft when it gets wet. This would kind of undulate in the water if it was a free-flowing leech. They talked a bit about terrestrials the other day. You can look in here and you see a cute little mouse pattern. I think the ears are on there for us is to buy them, but from the bottom, its tail, and you pull that across, make a big wake, hit the water and pull a big wake, jerking along late evening. So you'll see some that imitate life. Here's a crayfish imitation. You can take a look at these as they go along. There are other things that replicate nothing. They're a tractor pattern. You know, what does a daredevil spoon imitate? You know, well, it doesn't imitate much of anything. But nonetheless, fish will often take these. Now, why? That's a good question. We eat things we've never eaten before. Maybe it's just something new, and they say, hey, let's try that. Trout are territorial, especially the larger trout. So you can put something in there, you're an invader, it will push you out. I've had one particular trout that I put a fly in, came up and nosed it right out of the water. Just popped it right out of the water. Okay, put it in there again. Boom, banged it again. Just hit it with its nose. Get out of here, this is my territory. Went in there 4 or 5 times, and then he wouldn't come out again. I said, oh, try it again. Put it in there, banged it again. I think it was the 8th time through that he finally said, if you won't leave, I'll eat you. All right, so there's territorial behavior. Other times it's just opportunistic. You know, if you're sitting there, well, geez, I wasn't planning on eating, but boy, that's a juicy hamburger you just put in front of me. You know, maybe you will take a bite. So, opportunistic and territorial. Flies do not have to be large. Here's a small popper, kind of a mini frog imitation. So I've got a selection in here of small and large things. These are pretty. They're almost too pretty to fish. Again, I tie these for art. But from the underside, notice the white belly of a frog. Legs, flash. This is a bass bug. Made out of elk hair, actually. And it's also, it will dive a bit if you pull it and pop. Very effective bass fly. Another one in here, another kind of, you know, frog type imitation. So a number of things for you to take a look at here. But generally these are, you know, weighted themselves, or you're going to use a weighted line to get them down. If you want to pass those around. This is not free samples. I had to go over that with Ross on the last one. You're welcome to look. All right, let's get to casting these. I think you remember yesterday we talked about you got a larger fly